All right, welcome back, everybody, to another amazing episode of AI Data Mastery, where we explore how AI and data are reshaping B2B businesses. Quick thanks to our two sponsors, Data Accelerator and Evolve with AI. We appreciate you keeping the lights on and allowing me to interview wonderful people like David here. I'm your host, Jason Reno, and today on AI Data Mastery, I'm joined by David Gorsage from Loud Collective. And during the pre-show, I got even more excited for this episode. I think it's going to be amazing. His organization redefines how companies grow by blending capital, leadership, and execution. And David, welcome to the show.
Oh, thanks for having me, Jason. I've been looking forward to this, really. This is going to be an exciting opportunity for us to share a little bit more about AI and how the business world is evolving and from our perspective.
Yeah, do you want to give the audience just a quick snippet of your background and a little bit more about Loud Collective?
Sure. After college, I'm originally from Illinois, a little small town called Peoria, but went to Southern Illinois University and then was shipped off to San Diego, California. Had never been west of the Mississippi, and I was in the investment banking world out there. So that was back in a time we called it you sneezed and you made money in the investment banking world. But after about 10 years out there, my wife and I, we had our first child and moved back to Indianapolis. That's where family was. So I really got very despondent with the investment banking world. And with our daughter, actually, I did a lot of research in the medical libraries here at Indiana University. And I got a really strong taste towards the medical field. So ironically, I did a 180 degrees and went into orthopedic trauma. There's a reason for kind of to string this ahead. So when I was in that industry for over 10 years, I did very well, trained in specialized trauma. But one of the things that my wife had said, we had 5 kids, and she says, "You're like a doctor. You're never around." And because trauma is not scheduled surgery. So I actually went into a headhunter and said, "I have no idea what I'm going to do." And she says, "Well, why don't you become a headhunter?" I said, "Why would I do that?" She says, "Well, you understand businesses. You come from the investment banking world. You've worked with some of the most challenging professionals in orthopedic surgeons and neurosurgeons. There's this thing called the .com era that's getting started. And I really think you could do well. And I'll get you trained as a behaviorist. I'll get you to where you understand how to build high performance teams." So I did that. I cut my teeth in technology in the .com era. And it was really exciting. But more importantly, they first of all came to me and said, "We have this challenge. We have these very bright, talented, young college graduates that are coming out," which at that time was the millennials, and they're having a problem integrating them into their leadership model. So we created an onboarding process to do that. And then they came back to me and they said, "We see that you're actually better off for us at coaching them and helping them develop into this leadership world that we're trying to create in this transformational world." So I actually started my own company that was working in coaching. I'm a performance coach. I'm an executive coach, but that flavor of business was always been around me. And that's when eventually the Loud Collective had come to me and said, "We really see the skill sets that you have. We've created this ecosystem within the business world, all founders that have exited, some of them 2 and 3 times from companies." And he said, "We really want to take and disrupt the whole private equity world." And so we have now come into our own ecosystem. We actually call ourselves the House of Wisdom of all founders that have exited and said, "No, we want to help companies continue to build their enterprise value because of this silver tsunami that's coming along here now." And that silver tsunami is going to transfer about $13 trillion of assets because there is no generational transfer of those companies. So their only really option has been to sell to private equity. And that's where that world comes and really deteriorates their value. So we want to help them bolster their value into where they have actually be able to maintain the legacy of that company for themselves, and then have more options into how they choose to exit.
Wow, very interesting. Lots. So I mean, got a
Lots
wealth
to
of
unpack there, yeah.
yeah, wealth of knowledge and experience for sure. And so let's jump right in. And I know during the pre-show we had talked about. I mean, there's obviously multiple different directions we can go with this, but being in the B2B business space or with the main focus on B2B business, you had actually brought up the topic on the pre-show about how our businesses blending AI and in that human relationship.
Yeah.
We had touched on it where, there's e-com brands and other specific types of businesses that can rely more heavily and take a customer from, lead gen into an actual purchase with AI. But in the B2B space where you have 6-7 figure contracts and there's a lot of trust involved, there's that. I think there's still a big learning curve within the space on how does AI incorporate, and then where do you blend in that human touch and start building that relationship?
Yeah, that's a great place to start, because to me and I'm going to kind of preface it by saying a lot of the companies today, they recognize that they must innovate. Innovation seems to be a very catch-all phrase, but when we innovate, we forget in companies what we have found, that they're not leveraging really the talent that's within them. So what we're actually doing is taking an AI element and the human element, blending this together, which I'll unpack a little bit more here, but helping them understand the talent pool that they currently have, how they can use that talent pool to innovate within their company to open up new streams of revenue that they hadn't really thought of. So I can dig back into this. So what I have been able to do is I have a very particular assessment tool that we look at. Let's just say, remember the movie Moneyball?
Yeah, for sure. Billy Beane.
Okay. We have taken the Moneyball concept from a professional baseball team and incorporated it into a corporate entity. How do you take all the behavioral elements that are scored out into very validated assessment tools? Now, these are not ones that most of your listeners may be aware of, because we take emotional intelligence, critical thinking, creative thinking, behavior tendencies, and personality tendencies. We actually call it the MRI of the soul. So we're able to blend all that together to get a scoring mechanisms of over 78 behavior markers. Then we dump that into AI to be able to balance that against what they call the Belbin model of high performance teams. And now we can really see how a true company can function with their teams, with the roles that need to be incorporated into innovation and, frankly, delivery and execution of their business or product.
Wow. So how do you start? I mean, obviously I understand you dump it into the AI. Is this something where when you're coming into a business, you're either meeting with the employees are taking some sort of assessment or filling out information, giving their information, and then you're taking that, collecting it, scoring it, and then putting it into an AI model to evaluate and at the end of the day, basically find the strengths and weaknesses, right? Where's the weak link on the chains and where can we make improvements and fill gaps?
Yes. And yeah, that's a very baseline way to look at it. I mean, when you're looking at 78 behavior markers, we're able to basically tell a lot of things about you that you thought you just were hiding or not being able to share with people. We're able to really identify, like you said, what are the real strengths with that person? What are the gifts in that person? But also the things that they're not necessarily leveraging into even higher performance. So that's when you then couple that with what we call the Belbin model. This is an Oxford professor that came up with how to construct high performance teams. There's a baseline of that model that we then utilizing AI to cross blend those together by individual and then by this model to come out with who are the right performers that you need to have and profiles, or what are your gaps in this team that you need to develop to deliver on the product that you have or the service that you have that you were trying to execute for profitability, obviously.
Gotcha. Is this at a leadership level? Is this everybody in the business, or are you focused more on like the the decision makers and the C-suite type of level?
No, it can actually scale down into or cascade down into other, if sales individuals, you may have some project managers. I mean, it incorporate everybody in that company that really is critical to the delivery of their product or service.
Gotcha. And then, yeah, so so 78 personality points. Yes, you probably definitely, or data points. I mean, you're probably know more about the person than they know about themselves.
Exactly. Yes, exactly.
And then from there, then as the leadership team, you now have all this information, so you know where your gaps are. And then it sounds like you then also, from the coaching standpoint, if you have somebody in a key role that maybe lacks, now that's when you come in and you can suggest or provide training and make that person better. It's not necessarily like, hey, who do we fire, but where do we need to improve? What are the gaps? How can we better train this person to do their job better?
That's exactly right. No, that is the critical piece there. This is about, a lot of times there's untapped potential in all of us. And that's where this element helps us to discover the untapped performance opportunities within individuals that can blend into this team concept. It really elevates the whole human element of it for that company. There's a whole new energy that's released within that company because of untapped discovery of opportunities for that person to really perform even at a higher level.
Yeah, basically, yeah, all the unforeseen or untapped in potential really is what's
Yes.
brought out. So as from an employee standpoint in a business, it gives me the opportunity to improve and further grow and scale within the business, and obviously work my way up through the company then.
Yeah, and let's face it, there's been many a times that we've discovered that a person is not necessarily in their optimal role either. And again, this is to help enhance the high performing team concept. What is the right role for this person?
So now, obviously, if you're taking all this data from these individuals, how do you ensure the accuracy? Because I'm assuming the individuals, the employees, are filling out forms or giving information. People lie and that type of stuff. I mean, is there kind of safeguards or rails or?
Yeah, there's a validity index. This assessment is actually I can tell when somebody is not sharing accurate information.
Gotcha. Yeah. I mean, I've taken personality and stuff and tests like that before, but yeah, I'm always curious, like, is somebody trying to like trick it or, give an answer that they think they should give rather than give the truthful answer? Because like we were talking about on the pre-show as well, obviously your AI model, your AI system that's giving out these suggestions and everything else is 100% reliant on the data coming into it.
Yeah. Well, there's another stopgap in there too, though. Is there's also an interview process to really once we actually have the assessment, then we actually go through a 2-hour process to validate the information. So that's the other key step.
I got you. So you're doing an interview, taking the transcripts, and then leveraging those transcripts into the AI model as well.
Exactly.
Yeah, because that's one of the biggest. Whether it's really any AI model, it doesn't matter. And I think whether it's B2B business or anybody in general, there's this gigantic lack of knowledge that AI is obviously amazing. It's not going anywhere, but people don't realize that without proper data, without feeding it the right information and the right data, it's borderline completely useless.
Right. And really, if I just plugged in the data, it will hallucinate. That's the key from where. That's why the transcript from an actual interview is critical to validate the data that's been put in.
Gotcha. So there, like you said, there's that additional stopgap. You're not just reliant on a form or an application or something that somebody filled out.
Right. Yes, exactly.
This is just a curious question, but does the AI also scan like LinkedIn profiles, social media profiles? Is that incorporated into the evaluation or the assessment as well?
No, because we want to try to maintain the purity of the data that's extracted from the assessment, and then the transcript that's been compiled through the actual interview process.
Gotcha.
Now, the only thing that it does is again, it's incorporating what we call that Belbin model of baseline data of what comprises the high performance profiles. The Belbin model creates over 8 profiles that they have determined there's 8 roles that any high performing team must have. And so it takes that data and it filters it through that individual's performance. But then it'll also tell me in that team model where are the gaps in that team and which person in that role needs to then accommodate a specific gap in a role that's within that team as well. I can then take either a project and say, here's the team. Who should actually be the point people on this team? If you're going to go pitch, for instance, if you're going to go engage in a high level, it really doesn't matter what size of a contract or what size of a transaction it is. It'll also tell me how to position the team strategically in working with that opportunity.
Interesting. I mean, completely unique. So the Belbin model then, you said there's 8 key roles or 8 keys.
Yep.
So it takes the team that you're evaluating and how do they fit within those 8 roles?
Yep.
And then what do they need to fulfill those roles if they don't currently possess the knowledge, experience, or know-how?
Yes.
Very cool. Now, what about, obviously you're within businesses on a daily basis and working with businesses. What is the overall trend that you're seeing with even just specifically AI? Do you feel that, a lot of the companies that you're working with, are they leaning into it, embracing it, like accepting it? Or, I had one person on the show that was just like, yeah, we work with businesses, but they were more like kind of old school manufacturing businesses. And they're like, yeah, I have some clients that, think they're going to get away with not using AI or not leaning into it. What's the kind of the tone of the industry?
That's a great question, because what we've discovered is when I speak with a founder or the CEO or the owner of the company, I always want to first of all determine the desire, commitment, humility, and the decisiveness of them to make a change. If all 4 of those attributes are in place, invariably their response to me is, how do I need to be incorporating AI into my business? So we've already kind of discounted or already filtered out those that are not really ready to adopt. And I don't want to say we discount them, but we want to work with those that actually say, no, we know that we have to change. How do we change? What is it?
You're not the person to convince them that they need to change, no. But once they know they need to change, then that's when you come in and you guide them how you need to change correctly, strategically, and efficiently.
Yes, absolutely. And
gotcha.
I mean, that's another great segue into what the Loud Collective does on its complete ecosystem, because we're leveraging. Now we're able to have, only about the past 3 to 4 years, Jason, we've been able to access the data from a lot of companies that have already been sold. So we're starting to build into our process the data that is been extracted from companies that have sold over the past 4 years to give us, the baseline of where was this company in corporate governance? Where was this company in search engine optimization? Where were they in their marketing efforts? Where were they in their production side? So we're able to dissect that down, what we call the Gantt chart of a complete analysis of that company, that be able to help us understand this is what the company that sold at its highest enterprise value, this is the areas that they were perfected in, but this is where you have been assessed at. So that's there again, enterprise valuation gap.
Gotcha. Because back to your original statement that is really your main focus is how to show a business to increase enterprise value, not just bottom line revenue and money in the owner's pocket, but how do you build that true enterprise value that you can sell for many multiples when you're ready.
Yes.
What are some of the you had mentioned like data from past businesses that have you sold? Can you dig a little deeper there and maybe show, give some more examples of things that you're looking for, or basically things that you're looking for when determining or trying to improve enterprise value?
Now that one, we take over 1,200 data points. So,
oh, wow.
Yeah, I mean, that's, you can.
Back to the importance of data,
Yes,
right?
yes. And so we have qualitative data and quantitative data as well. So we do owner interviews. It's again, we then be able to distill the transcripts of all this information of the founding of the company, the direction of the company, the vision of the company, all the different the historical significance of different points of this, so that we collect all of this to be able to see. We throw this into our data room to be able to understand how we can compare and benchmark that against other companies that have achieved, more of a high performing status within any particular industry.
Very cool. So that's all of that historical data based off other companies increasing enterprise value being sold. And now you can come in and compare current companies that you're working with. So
yes,
you have those benchmarks and things of that nature.
Yes. The exciting thing for us, Jason, is it's obviously and you said the more data we have, so the more companies that we're able to have access to that data, the more pure that data starts to become, and you start to see trends and norms that gives us a better honing in on how these companies should help to be performing. And I'll tell you, I was at a conference this last week, and I would imagine this is going to be a startling statistic. Private equity, venture capital firms, they're no longer looking at 10-year turnarounds or 10-year return on investment. They're looking at 3 to 5 years because of the expectation of how much the data that they're able to capture now to really refine their execution efforts and transformation efforts. So if they're fearing about adopting AI, that's going to be a big, that's going to be a large cemetery of RIP companies that don't really try to start embracing this, because they're going to be just left out in the cold.
Yeah, well, to your point, yes, because something that would normally take 10 years to accomplish can now be done in that 3 to 5 years. And
yes.
That makes perfect sense. And it all ties back to the data that company is able to acquire. And it's amazing, whether it doesn't even matter what type of niche you're in the B2B space, companies just don't realize how much data that they probably already have or have access to that they're not leveraging. Even just like, identifying people that are visiting your website on a daily basis and learning more about the different companies and job titles and things of that nature, then comparing them to your actual clients. And then, there's just so much data that is available and out there that it's so many, just nobody's taking advantage of it, or people are starting to learn how to take advantage of it, obviously. But it's, if you're not capturing data, leveraging data, analyzing data, and using that data to make better sound decisions moving forward, then you're definitely going to miss the boat.
Yeah, because it's really about what we're learning too is what are the proper key performance indicators that need to be tracked with all this data that you're able to compile, because it moves from a company from a reactive standpoint to a proactive standpoint. And that's the whole goal that we have, is how do we help channel this data into more proactive approaches. And I can certainly, give you a client specific situation.
Yeah, please do.
And I know I've shared with you earlier, I can't say the name because it's a Fortune 50 company. But they came to me in blending all these concepts together. This is a Fortune 50 company that's looking at totally transforming their entire supply chain operations. And they are almost like blowing up their entire, what they have considered, how they looked at their entire transcended supply chain, because they recognize it was not giving them the data, the forethought to be able to manage their supply chain. So we started with the right people to start this project based on the prior conversation we just had. Then we looked at the actual project timeline, the project emphasis of this. Now I'm going to actually give you another layer of complexity here, but Michael Watkins wrote a book called The First 90 Days. And we actually incorporate what his strategic focus in gaining the amount of impact in 90 days into this supply chain transformation as well. So again, all of this is leveraging AI into speeding up decision-making processes and execution process. So they're going to have an entire supply chain transformation within 6 months.
Gotcha. And the key to this transformation is identifying, well, not the only key, but the main point of this transformation is to identify and capturing more relative data along the way, so that way them or their AI models can make better decisions.
Yeah, it's really about, because of AI and technology, you're able to get more real-time data. And that's where they need to incorporate more real-time data into their analysis of managing their supply chain.
Yeah, and exactly. And getting more data is easier than I think people realize too.
Absolutely.
There's tools, softwares, and whether it's purchasing data, but yes, there's a lot of data out there that's available at your fingertips as a business owner or leader. You just have to know where to go and the right data to get, correct? Or how to capture it.
Well, and like I said, I was at a conference, I'll give a plug to them, Distilled Intelligence out in Virginia. There was over 64 companies there that pitched there were startups. You would not believe the technology leveraging AI that's going to be coming forth within the next year to 2 years that's going to transform the entire ability to gain real-time data.
Yeah, it's I had a gentleman on I think it was last week. He was he has his own family office now, and he was one of the early investor in NVIDIA.
Yeah.
Dude was just a wealth of knowledge, like way smarter than me. And he was comparing AI to the printing press. He's like, forget the internet. He goes, go back to the printing press and research it, realize what the printing press did for the entire world. And that's what AI is going to do over the next, 5 to 10 years is, flip every business, every practice, every system, every procedure, every SOP is going to have to be completely reevaluated and retuned to capture data and leverage AI.
Yes. And I think the hardest challenge right now for all of us is we get too much into, this is what I find most common. The owners that are, and especially even their executive teams, they're working too much in their business versus on it. And there has to be almost like a dedicated person to working on the business especially through the lens of innovation, to keep a pulse on all of this technology that's, rapidly coming to the business world today. That I'm not an AI expert. I'm not a technology person. I just know what I need it to do. And I just go to the right people, says, this is what I'm looking for to be done. How do we do that? And I think that's the greatest question to be able to ask in today's business world is, they're out there. The resources are there. And if you're not finding yourself plugging into those resources, your platform is a good way to help them constantly keep a pulse on what's happening. That's, it's listening and being engaged in what is happening today so that I can keep on top of it and help myself be able to keep my business on top of this so that I don't fall behind, because that transformation is going to happen very rapidly.
Correct. I have my own opinion on this, or I have my own answer, but I'm curious yours. What do you think is the biggest mistake businesses are making right now when it comes to AI?
Personally, I think just they're not allowing them. They're thinking it's too complex, but yet so therefore they automatically do not attempt to embrace it. This is just start to go, listen to the podcast. There's so many different user groups or even business groups that are out there. Just go listen. It's just, they don't even attempt to try to gain a element of knowledge for it first. And
Yeah,
it's
and I feel like you're either, so there's one or two. There's either that the business owner that just doesn't embrace, doesn't acknowledge, is kind of just scared or it's too overwhelming, or you have the complete polar opposite where you have the business owner that just wants to slam AI into everything like as soon as possible.
yes,
And then it's just like, whoa, time out. Like we got to meet somewhere in between. There has to be a strategy. There has to be a growth plan tied to this. You can't
yes,
go implement AI into 10 different places in your business because you might be able to implement it, but it's going to be half-ass and barely work, right? Let's figure out a priority. What are the biggest gaps that we can fill? And let's go knock it off one or two gaps at a time, not 10 at once. And I think that's,
yeah, you're right. I was to say that that's the next layer that I would say is no, you don't need to. It's about progress, not perfection. It's just start making steps in progress.
well, and it's just like like any most businesses, right? You start trying to do too much or be too much to too many people, and then it's going to dilute what you're good at, right? Your most successful businesses are really, really good at one single thing, and that's the approach that I try to, even coach some of our clients with AI is, yes, let's take this as a priority. Let's implement one or two, get really, really good at it, make sure it works perfectly, then move down the priority ladder. But yeah, you try to do too much at once and you're just gonna, do everything half-assed and it's not gonna work. And then you're just gonna set yourself back even further, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. And I think it depends on what is the core competency of that company, and start there. Just what is the core competency that got them to this level of success, and then say, okay, what is the key driver? What were the core initiatives that brought us this place? Now, how can we incorporate AI just into that? Just start with that.
Yeah, exactly. How do we, because obviously revenue is key. So yes, what are the key, money making activities that the business is best at? Let's go emphasize those, generate extra revenue, or make sure we're not missing out on any revenue, and then start layering it on from there. I agree 100%.
I did want to throw a plug. I mean, I just want to make sure that to your listeners, though, that as a consultant within the business realm, and I would say we actually, not just to tell somebody, we actually help them execute, but there has to be an element of purposeful innovation, no matter who you are as a company. And that's where AI can really help support identifying that purposeful innovation too. So even if they started at that point, that's going to probably vault them ahead of their competitors as well.
Yeah, and I actually like the word you threw out when you were at some point, when you're evaluating, you had mentioned the word humility, right? Which I think is key, because if that business owner founder doesn't have a layer of humility, being able to accept that his baby, that baby that he's been nurturing for so long, could improve, could be better, then you're just talking to a wall pretty much, right?
Exactly.
So they're all incredibly good information. I mean, there's just I think we could probably sit here and ramble on for another hours and hours on AI and data, but this was a phenomenal unique aspect to using the data. So many businesses get caught up in an AI SDR and all these different little widgets and stuff that you see on Facebook ads and whatnot. But I really like how we were able to unpack and show how you're using data for far more than just lead generation and conversions and things of that nature. So that's really what we're trying to open our eyes, or open our audience's eyes to.
Yes,
there's so many ways to use data, not just from that external lead generation client acquisition point, but then throughout the entire process, throughout your entire business, to improve every aspect of it.
Spot on.
Perfect. Anything else that we missed, or anything else that you think we might want to touch on here as we wrap it up?
No, I think that just to kind of scratch the surface on things, I always say my job is sometimes just to stick the stick in the cage of the owner, just to say, wait a minute, I need to stop and think about this and maybe explore that a little bit further. And that's, to me, that's the awareness is just that beginning of that discovery. Okay, what can I possibly do differently? just like we said, in one step that can transform who I am as a company and a legacy of my company. That's the key thing that touches my heart. Is we don't just do this from the standpoint of the qualitative and quantity. How do we help this owner leave a legacy that they've worked so hard for, and making sure that we're helping them through AI and all these other elements to realize what they built and what that legacy can be for them and their family.
Yeah, you had mentioned right in the beginning of the call, or in the beginning of the show, that because less and less businesses are transferring. You mentioned generational transfer, correct? It's just, yep. I honestly, I didn't even realize that. I don't know if there's stats or something behind it, but you're saying that fewer and few businesses are transferring down to the next generation. They, yep, end up selling, or transferring their wealth, by selling their business and transferring it a different way.
Yeah, I mean, it's unfortunately most of them, either they don't get sold, or they get dramatically sold at a very deep discount. So private equity is the one that's kind of gaining the upper hand with that. So that's why I say we're in the business to disrupt private equity, to really help that business owner maintain that enterprise value that they've built on so far in their life. So it's the blood, sweat, and tears that goes into that entrepreneur and their family, and the sacrifices they've made. All we're trying to do is help them retain that. So it's $13 trillion in the next 8 to 10 years that's going to be transferring in these businesses, and that's where we are energized and passionate about helping to make sure that we do our best to help support them gaining that enterprise value individually in their companies.
That's awesome. Making sure, yeah, they get the most, they get their most out of all their blood, sweat, and tears. Correct.
Exactly.
Wonderful. Well, David, I really appreciate you being here. I think you make a phenomenal repeat guest. I know I've been mentioning that to a few individuals, where it'd be interesting to see maybe reconvene in, say, 6 to 12 months from now, and see if the advice and the take on AI and data has changed a little bit, because obviously it's changing by the day. And then also, if anybody wants to learn more about Loud Collective, their website is loudco.com.
Yep.
Jump on there, reach out to David on LinkedIn, connect with him. Obviously, he's a wealth of knowledge, and really appreciate you being here.
No, this has been a joy, Jason. Thanks again.
All right, wonderful. Well, as we sign off, don't forget to subscribe. Don't forget to follow us on social media, and stay tuned for another episode in a couple of days here. And appreciate everybody listening. And David, thanks again for your time.
Yeah, really absolutely. Thank you.
Take care, everyone.
All right.